Increasingly, public reaction to mass killings is obviously driven by media coverage. And with a 24-hour news cycle, it's hard to escape. Some have tried to put limits on their coverage of violence, like this.
I think it's a very big thing for us to show anything like a beheading or someone being killed on camera. As one of the policies we do have at CNN, we do try and avoid that wherever possible. There are exceptional circumstances where we'll show a shooting in the distance.
Authorities are identifying the shooter, but we have decided not to name these mass killers as a policy here on the Kelly File.
But for others, as the crass saying in newsrooms go, if it bleeds, it leads. Joining me now to talk about how the media affects this all are James Alan Fox, professor of criminology, law, and public policy at Northeastern University, and the man who, along with Jack Levin, a minute ago edited the book Extreme Killing. Good to see you again, James. Mark Regan, co-host of Boston Public Radio. I love that show, by the way, on 89.7. And Gonzalo Bacigalupe. Did I get it right?
Yep.
Pretty close. Thank you. Professor of counseling and psychology at UMass Boston. Good to see all three of you. I've read you write endlessly about this wall-to-wall coverage inspires, in certain cases, more shootings, things like that. Should I not have mentioned the names of those two people in that couple at the top of the show?
Well, the spoken word doesn't have that much effect. Perhaps to some extent when we see the pictures on the covers of magazines. But, you know, let's not overdo the copycat effect. You have to, all the other conditions have to be there. And then then seeing someone else, a role model, who does something that you admire, thinks bold and brave, that can be the precipitate.
But you go even further than that. I've read all your stuff, James, and you say we shouldn't even get information about, the public shouldn't get information about this person because despite what people like me think, we don't have any, there's no value to it. We don't learn anything that can be useful to prevent anything else. You really believe that?
I really do, because we can't predict it. We can't identify these in advance. Now, the problem with that is we turn monsters into heroes for some people, but we humanize them. And for the victims, it adds insult, literally, insult to injury by having so much attention paid to the person who took their child's life.
You did a flip-flop on this, did you not? When we used to talk about this, your position was transparency. You've been a journalist your whole life. Everything's out there. You don't buy that anymore, do you?
Well, I was a newspaper reporter until a year ago, and when your newspaper reporter is kind of drummed into you, you're not supposed to be editorializing, you're not supposed to be making decisions. This is going to hurt you don't intentionally hurt the victims, but you're not there to be an advocate. But now I'm not a newspaper reporter anymore, and something just flipped in me in this latest killing. I thought, why should I name these people? I'm on the radio for 3 hours. Why should I name them? Why should I go into details? And you read.
You don't want to know anything about their background either, like James did?
I guess I want to know why, like everybody else wants to know why. But in anticipation, coming here, I was reading some of these stories, going all the way back to Columbine. I'd forgotten that the Columbine killers were on the cover of Time magazine. Yohar Tsarnaev on the cover of the Rolling Stone, looking terrific. So I just sort of feel like if I don't have to do it anymore because I'm a newspaper reporter, I'm not going to do it.
Gonzalo, you're going to make it unanimous, it looks like.
I agree. And
why?
Well, we don't remember the victims. We forget that they were victims, so there's no capacity for us to empathize with the consequences of such a horrific...
Why can't we walk and chew gum at the same time? Why can't we learn about the victim without celebrating him or her at the same time that we celebrate the lives of men and women who lost them?
But not at the time of the heat of the moment, when you find reporters in an helicopter sort of like trying to understand what's happening there and repeating the same kind of, bias approaches to the killers.
Before you say so, I just thought about you for a second. You and your colleague Jack Levin are making the case passionately all over the media the last few days and before that mass killings are not up. If mass killings are not up, but media coverage is way up, then one would suggest it's having no effect on the potential for more horrible crime. Isn't that a fair conclusion?
It's not up, but it's also not down, by the way.
But media coverage is skyrocketing.
And but that's affecting people's perceptions. People think mass killings are up. It's not just the fact we have so much publicity, it's the nature of it. 20, 30 years ago, we didn't have satellite trucks that would show up at Columbine High before the cops. We didn't have 24-hour news channels that would spend hours and hours and hours covering these cases. Back 20, 30 years ago, the networks would never break away from the soap operas to cover something because they had nothing to cover.
Have you changed your mind in the last 2 minutes, or you're not changing
No,
your mind again?
I'll disagree with you on this much, though. I think that the idea that we're going to remember the victims and the details about the victims, no matter what we do, is just not true. We don't
But even in the
remember.
moment.
We don't remember good news. We remember bad news, and I think that's why there's something in human nature that they're attracted to the stories of the villains. They're not attracted to the stories of the lovely people. You look at comments, which are not the be-all and the end-all, but you look at what's most read or what people comment on in stories. It is the stories about the bad people. It's not the stories about the
But
good people.
is it about the villains or is it about the media that somehow highlights that piece? Because
well-
in general, I find that in social media, there's more positive aspects about the interactions than negative one. I mean, and usually mass media tends to highlight the negative.
Can I put one more thing on the table for a second? I'm sorry, James, just hold on 1 second if you can. You know, we're talking about the potential impact of this 24/7 exposure of the killers on killers in waiting. How about the general public? We get a lot of calls today on the radio. I mentioned this in the earlier segment from people who are really nervous out in the world when they see these stories 24/7. When they see the killing of Laquan McDonald 10,000 times falling onto the street. What does that do to me and us and kids? What
Well,
does it
and
do?
it creates the expectation that the next killing is going to be, with a higher number. So it's sort of like almost like a competition. We had the Planned Parenthood killing a few days before, then we get this one, and then there's the next one. And so the usual thing is, you quote count the victims, and then we compare them, which is
Well, we shouldn't talk about records. It seems
Yep.
to always
Yep.
the largest in 10
Yep,
years,
yep.
the largest in
Awful.
the state. But let me say it's inappropriate. Now, consider,
Which is
for example,
inappropriate?
the way it's cut, when we
rankings,
go
you mean,
overboard.
yeah,
Well,
okay.
that is, but it's when we go overboard. Let's consider, for example, James Holmes, the shooter from Aurora, Colorado. When he went to court for his arraignment, he sat there for 45 minutes. Nothing happened, but every single channel was focused on it. Now you go to Norway with Anders Breivik, who killed 77 and was a narcissist and wanted the attention. The judge said, the media's not going to be in this courtroom because he wants them there. He wants the attention and didn't give it to him.
I don't have the right to see someone prosecuted as being prosecuted in my name.
You were right, but there was no. What was gained by that? He sat there. There was, it was no
Well,
news. Nothing happened.
I think that's going way too far. I mean, I think we have an obligation to cover a trial and for the media to be there
That
to
wasn't a
see what goes
trial.
on.
That was just his sitting
The
in
arraignment.
court for 45
Okay.
minutes with nothing at all
See, let me-
happening.
But I certainly don't want the media locked out of
I
court
agree with you.
proceedings.
You know, rather than us just blaming the media, which you three at least are doing, even though you're a part of it, isn't there a pogo-esque aspect to this? I mean, we've discussed this a million times. They're giving us exactly what we want. If we weren't watching it endlessly, they wouldn't be showing
it's like
this
people
stuff.
say how much they hate negative ads and political campaigns and what moves people, it's negative ads. So I think we're a little bit, I'll repeat it, there's something in human nature which draws us not to the upstanding citizen, but draws us to the person that's not, because it's more fascinating.
Okay, very quickly, we only have 30 seconds left. For the two on the ends who have the strong positions you do, you're not saying there should be none of the things we're talking about. You're saying it shouldn't be like on an endless loop. Is
the
that what you're
balance should
talking
be
about?
different. Yes.
And how
Yes,
about
the
you? Is that
balance
where you're
should be
going?
different.
Or are you going even further?
Well, I'm concerned with scaring people.
Yeah.
Thinking that the threat is all around them when in fact the probability, the risk is extremely low, hasn't increased. You're much more like, you mentioned the woman at the mall. Or
In a car
Toys R Us.
accident.
She was
Right.
much more likely to get killed on the way to Toys R Us
Yep.
in a car accident than at Toys R Us.
But don't you think we take these issues much more seriously when we actually see them as opposed to just
But
hear
also,
about
but
them?
we
we're-
get scared more.
We're in a war, and I think that that's part of this, that people think that in retaliation for the wars we've carried on in Iraq and Afghanistan, that there's going to be people targeting Americans, and I think that's adds
But
to
I think
fear.
the media can
Quick.
shape the conversation differently so that we do
Do
something.
my best. James, Marjorie,
It's your
Gonzalez,
fault, Jim.
pleasure
It's
to
all
meet you,
your
by the way.
fault.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.